Hello and welcome to another edition of News Showcase. I am Priya, Tamil Nadu's first artificial intelligence news presenter. Dr. S. Jaishankar, the External Affairs Minister, doubled down on Prime Minister Narendra Modi's accusation that Jawaharlal Nehru, the nation's first Prime Minister, intended to cede the island to Sri Lanka in response to the Kachativu Island dispute. The deserted island, which is roughly 1.6 kilometers long and more than 300 m broad, was acknowledged as a Sri Lankan territory under the Indo-Sri Lankan Maritime Accord in 1974 by the government of the day, Indira Gandhi. Following a media story based on an RTI response that Tamil Nadu BJP chief K. Annamalai got regarding the 1974 agreement, the matter has come up again. Following the dismissal of the Tamil Nadu administration during the emergency, two countries signed another agreement in 1976 that prohibited fishermen from fishing in each other's territorial seas. The BJP has raised concerns about the harassment of fishermen in Tamil Nadu by the Lankan government, particularly in light of the upcoming Lok Sabha elections. On Monday, Indian gold futures reached a record high, reflecting gains in international markets and reducing demand in India, the world's second-largest consumer of gold. The price of domestic gold futures increased to 69,487 Indian rupees per 10 grams, marking a nearly 10% rise in 2024. Furthermore, India's gold imports are predicted to drop by over 90% in March from the previous month, reaching their lowest level since the COVID-19 pandemic, according to a government official and two bank dealers. Tata's forced IPO is expected to cause significant issues. A major family-run firm in India is in a difficult situation. The massive automotive-to-tech giant Tata Group is rapidly heading toward a forced listing of its parent firm, which would result in a steep market markdown. In addition, the scrutiny that follows an IPO may lead to more issues, as if that weren't already awful enough. Tata Sons owns 14 publicly traded firms, including Tata Steel, Tata Consultancy Services, Jaguar Land Rover, Tata Motors, Air India, and Tata Electronics, which assembles iPhones for Apple and develops a semiconductor fabrication facility. Tata Sons, classified as an upper-layer non-bank financial business by the central bank, is set to list in September 2025, sparking speculation about its potential value. The Reserve Bank of India is aiming to prevent a similar failure to infrastructure leasing and financial services 2018 default, which caused a liquidity crisis and business collapse. Benjamin Netanyahu's protests have re-emerged political divides. Following the Hamas attacks on October 7th, thousands of protesters were temporarily placed on hold as a symbol of shock and national unanimity. However, 6 months later, thousands of demonstrators were back on the streets of Israel. Their ambition to remove Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel with the longest tenure, has intensified due to the war. Skunk water, an odorous chemical shot from water cannons, was utilized by police in Jerusalem to drive out demonstrators who had blocked Begun Boulevard, the main thoroughfare that runs through the city. More recent slogans calling for a quick agreement to free around 130 Israeli hostages still being held in Gaza echoed well-worn ones demanding his resignation and early elections. Countless of them are said to be deceased. With hundreds crammed into the wide streets around the Israeli parliament on Sunday night, Katia Amorza, whose son is currently serving in the Israeli army in Gaza, paused her speech with her megaphone. Pope Francis asked for a truce in Gaza and in Ukraine in Easter message. Pope Francis has demanded the release of Israeli detainees by Hamas and a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip during his Easter Mass at the Vatican. Despite health concerns, the 87-year-old Pope urged people to resist weapons and rearming, stating that peace is not achieved with arms but with outstretched hands and open hearts. He appealed for humanitarian aid to Gaza, the prompt release of hostages seized on October 7th, and an immediate ceasefire. The statement came just before new truce discussions between Israel and Hamas were scheduled to begin. The speaker emphasized the suffering experienced by civilians, particularly children, who question the reasons behind the war's death and destruction, stating that war is always seen as an absurdity and a defeat. Pope Francis also discussed the Ukraine crisis and warned against rearming. The Israel Defense Forces claimed that their soldiers had killed terrorists and discovered numerous weapons and intelligence documents nearby. Following Israel's announcement that it had information suggesting Hamas was utilizing the hospital as a base of operations for strikes, the raid took place. Hamas disputes that it conducts military operations at medical facilities. The main hospital in Gaza has been the scene of heavy combat in recent weeks, according to reports. The IDF claimed in a statement that soldiers had completed precise operational activity in the area of the Shifa hospital and exited the area after the retreat on Monday. Unverified reports suggest that Taiwan's outgoing president, Tsai Ing-wen, plans to flee if war breaks out with China. These narratives, which have been analyzed by the Information Environment Research Center, IORG, originated from Chinese state media and depict Taiwan's military drills as rehearsals for escape. Despite these narratives and Beijing's influence efforts, the Democratic Progressive Party's DPP, Lai Ching-te, was elected president. Beijing views both Tsai and Lai as separatists and insists on Taiwan's reunification with China. These narratives have become talking points in Taiwan, often gaining traction during politically sensitive times. Chinese state media and Taiwan-based outlets have propagated these narratives, including a runaway pass narrative. These stories have been amplified and modified by various publications. The Taiwanese government has denied these claims. The actual impact of these influence efforts remains unclear. It's important to note that these reports are unsubstantiated and the situation is complex and evolving. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol has expressed his government's willingness to engage in discussions, with doctors opposing the plan to increase medical school admissions. This comes amidst a doctor shortage and ongoing strikes by over 90% of the country's 13,000 trainee doctors. Strikes are protesting against the government's plan to increase medical school admissions by 2,000 by 2025. President Yoon has accused the medical sector of prioritizing their interests over public health and called for a more reasonable solution. Despite previous government efforts, the medical sector has strong opposition, with some professionals arguing that the plan, not consulted in advance, would do little to resolve the issue, including low pay for trainee doctors. In a significant local election, President Tayyip Erdogan's AK party, AKP, suffered a major defeat, marking a potential shift in Turkey's political landscape. Istanbul Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu, Erdogan's main rival, led the mayoral race in Istanbul, and his party, the Republican People's Party, CHP, retained Ankara and gained 15 other mayoral seats. This is the worst defeat for Erdogan and AKP in over 2 decades. İmamoğlu, a potential presidential challenger, appealed beyond the CHP's secular base. Despite economic strains, Erdogan secured re-election and a parliamentary majority in 2023. However, economic issues led to a significant electoral defeat for Erdogan and AKP, with İmamoğlu emerging as a strong rival. The election day was marred by violence, resulting in casualties. This could signal a shift in Turkey's political landscape. Chinese shares led a rally in Asia, with mainland blue chips surging 1.39% following positive manufacturing data. U.S. stock futures also pointed higher, bolstered by easing inflation pressures and expectations of a June interest rate cut. This optimism lifted gold to a record high, while crude oil remained firm amid a tighter supply-demand picture and expectations of OPEC output cuts. However, Japanese shares fell 1.4% due to concerns about yen buying intervention and a corporate survey showing a worsening mood among big manufacturers. US S&P 500 futures and Nasdaq futures gained 0.33% and 0.54% respectively. The dollar remained steady against the yen despite official warnings of intervention. Spot gold rose 1.2% and Brent crude increased to $87.29 a barrel. Despite some markets being closed for Easter holidays, the overall sentiment remained optimistic. Factory activity in Asia showed mixed results in March. China's Caixin/S&P Global Manufacturing PMI rose to 51.1, indicating expansion at the fastest pace in 13 months, providing relief to global investors. South Korea's exports rose 3.1% year-on-year due to robust chip demand. However, manufacturing activity was weak in Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Malaysia, and Vietnam. Japan's PMI stood at 48.2, indicating contraction for the 10th straight month. South Korea's PMI fell to 49.8 from 50.7 in February due to slowing domestic demand. The soft PMI readings highlight the challenges policymakers face with patchy signs of recovery and global demand. Meanwhile, manufacturing activity expanded in the Philippines and Indonesia. The IMF projected Asia's economy to expand 4.5% this year, driven by robust U.S. demand and expected stimulus measures in China, but the recovery would be divergent across economies. Thank you for watching. I am Priya, Tamil Nadu's first artificial intelligence news presenter. Do tune in, same time tomorrow, for a roundup of the latest news and updates in India and around the world.